Good morning, and welcome to today's event, Strengthening the Resilience of the Caribbean Service Sectors. I'm Wazim, Mowla, Fellow and Lead of the Caribbean Initiative here at the Atlantic Council's Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center. Today's conversation is part of our ongoing work at the Caribbean Initiative that looks at finding new opportunities for the region to accelerate its development goals, but while doing so sustainably and with resilience in mind. We have applied this method across a number of sectors, from energy security to climate adaptation to financial inclusion to investment opportunities in the region. Now, today, we'll look at the services sector. The Caribbean is, as many know, vulnerable to the ebbs and flows of changing commodity prices, exogenous shocks, climate change, etc. There needs to be new development with scale, with resilience in mind, looking ahead to the next phase of growth. Well, whether it's energy resources, whether it's the tourism economy, telecommunications, all of these are opportunities for Caribbean stakeholders, and importantly also for U.S. investors and U.S. stakeholders that are engaged in the region. Today, we're going to talk about some of those sectors. Like I said, tourism, telecoms, BPO, among others. For our conversation today, we're going to be looking at how the Caribbean can advance its goals, working with its U.S. partners, working with U.S. companies that are not just invested, but those that want to be invested. And for that, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers. And I thank all of them for joining us today. To kick us off, I'd like to turn it to our moderator for the event, Brett Perlmutter. Brett is the founder and former head of Google Cuba. Brett is also a champion of the region, having spent significant time in the region and has been a great partner of the Atlantic Council in the time that he spent with us. Brett, thank you very much for joining, and I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Waz. We're so thrilled to have this August panel on a topic that is so near and dear to our hearts, but also of critical importance to the United States and to the region. As Waz alluded to, the Caribbean is America's third border. And we have three esteemed panelists that will address the interplay economically and through resilience between US and Caribbean collaboration. Um, with Without further ado, what I'll do is I'll launch into our first question, and if I could have each of the panelists before answering introduce themselves. So please tell everybody your name, what you do, and go ahead and answer the first question, which is, given the proximity between the Caribbean and the United States in terms of shared language, people-to-people ties, culture, and economy, how does demand from the United States and the US business sector participate in the region's tourism, telecommunications and BPO, and financial service sectors development? So let's go over and kick it over to you, Balin, to start.
Well, thank you, Brett. Um, my name is Balin Naya, and I'm the CEO of Liberty Latin America, and we provide telecommunication services across the Caribbean, Central America, and South America. So Peru, a little bit in Chile. We are in Panama, Costa Rica, all the Caribbean islands, most all, and Puerto Rico. And very happy to be here, Brett. The Caribbean islands are very, very important to not only our business, but to the United States as well. It is the closest physical geography to us that has not only economic significance, but security significance as well. And we are very happy to be investors in all these islands.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And Monica.
Hi, I'm Monica Paratorano. I'm a senior economist at the World Bank. I work for the Latin American and Caribbean region in private sector development, innovation, productivity, entrepreneurship, and of course on tourism. And I've been working in the region in tourism for a while already. The question was about how does the Caribbean proximity, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Given the Caribbean's proximity, why is it so important in terms of US demand and economic interplay?
Sure. Yes. So indeed, the US is the largest source of visitors for to the Caribbean. We just recently produced a study of 12 Caribbean countries, and we found that 52% of arrivals from non-resident tourists are from the US, and some countries being even higher, like 82% in Bahamas, 69 in Jamaica, and 65 in Belize. So basically, the location, the Caribbean diaspora in the United States, the English language, and cultural events are very important. So there's a lot of opportunities for US investment, and also to continue furthering the supply chain integration. I mean, we can continue discussing further.
There's a lot of points that we can continue on, but before we
Yes.
do, Juan, please introduce yourself, tell everybody what you do and why the Caribbean is so important.
Sure. My name is Juan Castro. I am the Vice President of Destinations, Global Destinations for Virgin Voyages, a Sir Richard Branson startup. The Caribbean is of the utmost importance to the industry, not just to Virgin Voyages. As Monica said, 82% of all visitors to the Bahamas comes from the US, and out of those, 80% come on a cruise ship. So for us, the management of destinations, the growth of these destinations, the support of government for its people, educating their constituencies to support a touristic industry is very vital to us. And we work very closely with many of the governments. And part of my responsibility is government affairs. And so we interact with all of the different government in the Caribbean to work through some of the challenges that we all have when it comes to people, education, training, and particularly training in the touristic sector.
Wonderful. So we have two panelists from the US private sector, from telecommunications, and from the cruise industry, and Monica, who looks across all industries and studies this incredible symbiosis between the US and the Caribbean. So we're really well situated to solve all of the regional problems in this remaining 50 minutes. So as a first step to doing that, maybe we'll go in the same order and ask all of our panelists, what do US and international businesses have to gain from investing in the Caribbean? So maybe we'll start with you, Balin.
Sure. These markets are very resilient. And for the most part, with the exception of perhaps like Trinidad, Jamaica, the currencies are very they're pegged or they are, trading in US dollars. So you have a lot of that stability. Secondly, the economies are quite resilient, as we've discussed already. Tourism is the biggest driver, unless you're like in Trinidad, where energy is also a big driver, and there's some other countries where you have some alternative sources of revenue. And when you are a services-oriented economy, clearly the culture has to slowly also move in that direction. Our experience investing in the Caribbean has been extremely positive. You'd be shocked to hear that the Caribbean, in some cases, I'll take Barbados as an example. Barbados is 100% fiber to the home, meaning every resident in Barbados gets their broadband on fiber. The United States don't have that. Japan doesn't have that. Germany, UK, nobody has that. And but Barbados does. And so these are economies and infrastructure that's actually world class. And certainly you combine that with a service-oriented type culture, you have an environment that's very positive. The only downside in the Caribbean island investing is there is not any one single island that has scale. And so you're investing in, say, St. Lucia that has, some 100,000 people. And capital intensive investments like what I would do and our company does is somewhat challenged that way. So so you have the haves and have-nots in the Caribbean, Jamaica, which has 3 million people, Trinidad with 1 million. And then you go down to countries with 50,000, 100,000, that's challenging. And then you have in between like Bahamas, which has about 300 some thousand people, but a very rich economy. So when we look at investing in the Caribbean, it's not one size fits all. And that's, there's no one island. And if you go in the Caribbean, they feel that way as well. They kind of hate it when you say, everybody's the same, or the Caribbean's the same. It's not. The Bahamians are so different than the Jamaicans, who are so different than the Barbadians. And when we look at investing, that's how we look at it as well.
Right. Great points. And I want to underscore one word you said, which is resilience. And I would say that in the service sector, where people are just the absolute best asset, they're resilient on the individual level, and these economies are resilient. Which I think a lot of people in the United States that may be surprising to hear at first. Maybe Monica, we can segue to you, who studies this at the individual and society level. What role does the U.S. private sector play in terms of the economic development and the betterment of people's livelihoods?
Sure, yes, thank you. So first, I would like to mention the scale and economic, two facts to understand and to set your question and give you a proper answer. The scale and economic impact of the market, right? The market size, etc. So the Caribbean is, as we just have been discussing, it's the most tourist-dependent region in the world, with tourism contributing with around 22% of GDP across the 12 countries that we measured in this study. And as we said, the US is a major player, right? Some countries, in fact, like Antigua and Barbuda, have tourism accounts for 87% of GDP. So just to give you these numbers is just to say that, and when I just mentioned before that about half of tourist visitors are from the US, then you can imagine what's the impact, right, of the US in the Caribbean tourism sector. Yeah, the sector is also a major employer. It's responsible for 1.5 million jobs in 2023 when we were able to measure, and it has a lot of women and youth making up for that labor force. The region also attracted 70 million cruise visitors and million more overnight tourists annually, and US is a dominant source market. Cruise lines, many of which are US-based, dominate the market, with the Caribbean accounting for about 40% of global cruise passengers. So here is just to give you a dimension, and also in terms of the gains that investing in Caribbean in the Caribbean tourism, or participating, let's say, in the Caribbean sector, tourism sector, from US visitors and investors, is going to have a great impact that it will affect not only the investors but also the region and the countries themselves. As you will suppose, they are all very different, and this is a very important point that I wanted to highlight. And then just to give you 3 examples on how this could happen, and is that the Caribbean is given the opportunity of accessing high value but also high value market. So this diversity that is not only across countries but also within countries, we can see that the Caribbean has not only sun, sea, and sand, but now there's a trend, and we conducted a study on actually US visitors to the Caribbean, and the trends are like there's a higher demand now for luxury, wellness, and adventure tourism. So these are opportunities of high value, right? That are important, also contemplating that it's still the high volume of cruises and all-inclusives are there. And then the diversification and resilience that it was also mentioned, I think, is an important point. The Caribbean offers a hedge against market volatility, and it also real year-round appeal, right? And geographical, so it's always paradise, as we can say, and then resilience and sustainability are being prioritized not only in the governments but across the world, right? So this is an alignment where the countries are really worrying about how to take action to become more resilient and more sustainable. And then in terms of opportunities of new segments, just to mention again, the adventure tourism is the one fastest growing segment globally, with adventure travelers spending 25% more than average tourists, and 75% of that expenditure goes to local suppliers. So here we see an example on how it goes, the impact goes to not only to jobs, but also to the value chain that it's going to feed back again into the economy beyond the tourism sector. Adventure tourism travelers spend 23% more than all-inclusive resort visitors, and 55% prioritize sustainability in holiday planning. So this is an important aspect, that the trends are like this, and now the U.S. investors have to tap on these new trends, right? Because these are all new opportunities. Again, with
Fascinating.
alternative accommodation and cruises that are luxury cruises, there are smaller ones, home porting, boutique cruises. And in terms of alternative accommodation and even in adventure, there's a lot of potential for digitalization opportunities for businesses of
So
the
Monica,
US.
I think you've hit on some key points, and clearly there's a lot that these economies have to gain from partnering with U.S. companies. And clearly there's a lot to gain, especially in the tourism sector and the telecommunications sector that we touched on. Juan, from where you sit at Virgin Voyages, you are in the business of taking folks from the United States to the Caribbean. How has that been for the business? What are the destinations that are of interest to your customer base? And why has the Caribbean been so critical for Virgin Voyages?
Yeah, great questions. The cruise industry has been investing in the Caribbean for the better part of 50 years now. If you look at most of the major cruise lines have developed a private destination within the Bahamas, Bahamas being the number one country that is visited, and hence why Port of Miami is the cruise capital of the world. It is very important for the destinations to have these development programs. We have the one thing about every Caribbean destination is they have a highly educated population that allows for the training and development of tourism within our sector, particularly cruise, but also with the all-inclusive properties and what have you. So the importance of having the destinations invest in their people when it comes to education, comes to training, development, is critical for our industry, and I would say for the entire tourism industry.
Wonderful. So let's pivot for a second. If we take a quick step back, we're at this unbelievable moment in history where there's this great digital transformation happening, where more and more people, now the majority of the world is connected. We're also living at the dawn of the AI revolution. Balin's in the business of connecting people. Um, I want to maybe start with Balin, but ask all of our panelists, how is accelerating the Caribbean's digital transformation? Um, how does it drive growth? How does it underscore the resilience that we've talked about? And how does it make the Caribbean more competitive when some of the best things it has to offer are just unbelievable human capital? So maybe we'll start with you, Balin.
Sure, Brett. Interestingly enough, most of the governments in the Caribbean, and I say most because it's not all, have really leaned into this. you start initially with efficiencies as well as just removing friction. An example, it used to be like even when you land in the Bahamas, there's at least like 4 pages of paper you need to fill up before you can get off the boat or you land at the airport. For the most part, most of it's all been digitized. That process is not far from final yet, but we've been working with the government in Bahamas. We are, by the way, one of the largest employers in the Bahamas on the ground, with our local telecoms company. And we've been trying to help them with that digitization. And they've also leaned into that because it not only reduces friction coming in, but saves them tremendous amount of cost. Then the second part of the digitization, as you were pointing out, and this, by the way, is across all islands. Everybody's looking at ways to simplify things to enhance their industries. The second part of digitization for most of these folks in the as you pointed out, moving more and more towards hosting others. So if you go down to Barbados as an example, and if you by any chance have a meeting with the Prime Minister, Prime Minister Mia, within the first 10 minutes, she's going to be talking to you about data centers. She's going to be talking to you about AI and hosting and talking about the fact that Barbados rarely gets, if ever, gets hit by hurricanes, and it's got great connectivity. And so a lot of the governments have also decided that they want to leverage AI outside the United States, first as hosting and second to propel their economies as well. The second part has been more elusive, for the local economies and trying to figure out how AI can actually make things better for someone who is, who's a local merchant, as an example. The way we've been thinking about it and helping the governments and the communities is on digitization first, as we talk about removing friction. Secondly, about currencies and microeconomies. So we launched a fintech lending program, let's say in this case in Jamaica, where we loan $200 max, and depending on your credit, it's 400. And when I say depending on your credit, there is really no credit scoring in most of these places. So the way we do credit is because we are the telecoms provider, people pay their bills to us. We can kind of tell who pays their bills on time, who doesn't. And we've been building our own credit scoring for customers. And if you, have a track record with this, you now have access to microloans as well that you can use to either buy services from us, or you can, just go down to a grocery store and buy whatever you need. And so digitization of the financial sector is also extremely important.
This is fascinating.
Yeah, there's a lot of friction there in the financial sector. I mean, if you look at cost of money locally, it's Monica would know this. It's you're not talking about 5%, above. Um, there's no metric there that actually makes sense. You're talking about personal loans at 30, 40, 50%. These are very coercive type costs of money locally. So we've been trying to figure out how to solve that, even though that's not my business. So in the case of Jamaica, we had to work with JMMB, a local bank, because they have the banking license. So guys like us will always have to partner with somebody that has the license. But that took 2 years to get that approved with the central bank. So there's a lot of things that can improve there. But digitization is on the forefront of most governments to reduce friction and improve efficiencies.
We see how the fiber quickly becomes the bedrock of society. And from that bedrock, there's financial inclusion. You're extending consumer credit to people. You're giving them credit ratings so they can be included as part of the traditional financial system. And of course, historically, telecommunications was always the first step to BPO, which also plays a huge role in the region.
Yeah, I'll have something to add, but I'm gonna wait after Juan and Monica, so give them
Okay, good. All right, we'll put a pin in that and come back there. Juan, in terms of upskilling your workforce and the digital transformation, how does this play into your industry?
It's critical. In today's society, connectivity is paramount. And when somebody gets off of a ship in any destination, they expect to have that same connectivity that they have back home. Sometimes we have, the US traveler is sometimes geographically challenged and doesn't realize how certain things are in other worlds, in other countries.
Why is that
So
not surprising?
it's true, and so when they get off the ship and they're expecting to have 5G, and they only have 3G or something less, they're kind of disappointed. So to Balan's point, Prime Minister Mia Mottley, who is one of the really intelligent people in the Caribbean, who really cares about her destination and her people, has invested, and I think you're starting to see that throughout the Caribbean. I'm on the FCCA panels and committees, and we work very hard at getting the destinations to understand how important it is to have this kind of connectivity, because when a passenger does get off, they do expect to have that ability to do that.
Right. And especially because from the passenger experience, there's quite good connectivity while on the cruise, correct?
Yes, most cruise lines now have satellite Wi-Fi. It's just as fast as you being at home, and so they expect when they get off the ship, when they get to this, it's the same. And
Exactly.
many times it's not. And so for us, where I do itinerary planning also for Virgin, we take those things into consideration. If there's a destination that does and one that doesn't, we want to have, what we call our passenger sailors. We want that sailor satisfaction levels to be at an all-time high, and it's inclusive of connectivity and communications.
Wonderful. Well, I want to flip it over to Monica, and I actually have a specific question for you, Monica. But before I do, in terms of the passenger experience, I do want to highlight that on Virgin Cruises, all passenger sailors have an app which has this unbelievable feature. While on board, they can shake their phone. It's called Shake for
Shake
Champagne.
champagne.
They raise their phone, they shake it, and then champagne appears to them when they sail on Virgin Cruises, which I think is a wonderful feature.
Yeah,
Um,
we use proximity technology to make sure that we deliver the champagne to the right person.
Connectivity is important. Okay, Monica, I want to flip it over to you and ask you another question if you want to comment on the tourism piece. But one is with the digitization, with bridging this digital divide, how do we avoid a two-tiered Caribbean where there's societal tiers and also and feel free any of you to jump in. How do we in terms of the long tail, the scalability, how do we create a Caribbean that has equal levels of connectivity where some islands are not left in the dark? But Monica, if you
Sure.
take
Yes.
a stab.
Yes. Thank you. This is a very important. Just to comment, it's a great point that Juan was making about connectivity outside, in the destinations, because we want them to stay longer and to spend in the islands. So this is a key point that I just wanted to highlight from Juan. Yeah. So before going into what we can do, I just want to make some points on how digitalization reflects into the tourism very, very briefly. Do not worry, but just to make the point on why we are proposing those policy recommendations and private sector actions to avoid this two-tier Caribbean story derived from digitalization. And first is digitalization is a driver of growth, as you mentioned, and in the tourism. It helps expand the market and diversify demand. right? Through digital platforms, to bookings, and this is very important for developing these new markets that are going to be more connected with local value chains, enhancing visitor experience that it was already mentioned, and the product diversification, right? The digital nomads and any other products, like advertising, cultural festivals, natural-based experiences, etc. In resilience, also, this is very important, and is that digitalization allows for crisis response and business continuity. It builds adaptive capacity, right? Having also supporting inclusive recovery. So digitalization will allow not only to prevent, but to have also adapt quickly, and at the same time to in the recovery process with social protection, etc. So, and then in competitiveness, right? Meeting evolving consumer expectations, right? Improving the operational efficiency, and then here energy management, for instance, is an issue, and enabling data-driven policy. And this is very important because it will allow to monitor tourism flows, to take decisions for investments, and this will be in real time. So this is very important. And so to avoid this risk, which is a central concern for the World Bank, since digitalization accelerates, there's a danger, right, that larger countries are going to have better chances of tapping on accelerated digitalization, while other countries that don't have the capacity, or even within countries where we have SMEs and a market structure in tourism in which is dominated by larger players that have access to digitalization, not only faster, but also with more capacity financially and in terms of human resources, etc. So there are a lot of risks in that within country and across countries within the Caribbean region. And what we would suggest is that it's very important to first of all, propose a regional collaboration and policy harmonization. And this, I did not touch on these topics, but it's related to the point that was made earlier about the regulations, right? And how can regulations be updated and harmonized across across countries, and of course internationally, to make sure that all countries are going to be playing with the same rules, right? And having it's going to be a very important point. The regional collaboration, policy harmonization, and policy and regulatory harmonization and updated. It's a very important point so that everybody plays with the same rules. Also, target investments. I think this is a very important point in which international donors, etc., are going to invest in undeserved areas in countries, in rural areas, for instance. Inclusive access to finance is very important. And this for MSMEs that are the most of the businesses in tourism are all small businesses, and they don't have access to finance to digitalize, right? And this is related, for instance, to digital payments, which is an important form of tapping digitalization in tourism and in all services, right? So this is a very important point. Data research and market intelligence. So these regional data hubs in which the hubs collect data, analyze, and share tourism. It is open access. This market intelligence is open and it's free for all. It's going to level the field in terms of information, not only across smaller actors and larger actors, but also across countries. And so having this regional perspective is one of the most important points to avoid the two-tier. And then I would just close with one of topic that is on innovation. and incubators and accelerators that are run regionally. This will attract investment to the region, even considering the diversity, but at the same time, making sure that innovation is and here that it flourishes in all countries, right? And technology adoption is going to be across. So this regional perspective is very important. And here I will just
So
use
one
the moment
question,
because
Monica, and actually I wanted
just one second. I wanted to mention we have a project at the bank that is actually building a platform that is called knowledge and innovation and technology platform. And it's precisely looking forward to connect investors, entrepreneurs, academia, diaspora around issues that are important for the region. So this type of initiatives and leveraging CARICOM, the OECS Commission, etc., all these are very important players to have that regional perspective and make sure that we leverage
So
the
if I could
field.
jump in here, Monica, thank you. These are all really good levers. I do want to give Balin and Juan a chance to add their perspective about how to make sure the digital transformation is uniform across countries and also within countries, how to avoid a two-strata system where there are those who are connected and those who are not. Juan, Balin, is there anything you would add to that?
Just to build on what Monica just said, she highlighted quite a number of really good points. And of course, the platform you have, Monica, coming from, an international institution like this, comes with a lot of credibility to the governments. It has not been tremendous.
We're building it.
What's that?
We are building it. It's not yet
No,
there,
no,
but
no. I
it
don't
will
mean
get there.
the digital platform. I mean your company. I mean the bank. That is the platform. And the politicians and governments in these countries have so many different things that they're dealing with. Employment is always the number one thing they think about, and that's where folks like Juan and the tourism industry is their primary catalyst, and everything else is secondary to it. Secondly, every country wants to be independent in their thinking. It has been a challenge for us as investors there to try to get regional thinking. In one of my talks, speeches to all the politicians, I'm like, you need like an EU of the Caribbean. But we're far from it. There is no concept of an EU for the Caribbean because everybody feels differently. The sizes are different. A Jamaica would say, please don't compare me to a St. Lucia. A Bahamas would say, you know what, we're actually not even in the Caribbean. We're bigger than landmass than everybody else. You go to DR and Dominica, and they will say, listen, we speak Spanish. We don't even speak the same language any of you guys do. And then, of course, Cuba is completely different. And so for us as investors, we invest in every one of these countries. We literally treat them as separately because bringing them together is just too much. Now, on the flip side, thank God everybody is thinking the same way. And they do because they're hospitality driven, tourism driven. So that is the common bind among all of them. And to Juan's point around infrastructure in each country, they're different. When we bought into all these investments, we decided day one, and this was 2018 when we took this company public, every country is going to get LTE and some countries will get 5G. And the difference is the countries that get 5G are countries that are more friendlier to us on capital investment. And the rest, but nevertheless, everybody's going to get LTE, very good LTE, good spectrum, and everybody's going to get fiber. And we've done that. As a matter of fact, during COVID, which was a terrible time for my business and even worse for Juan's business, but terrible for my business because when there's no tourism coming to these islands, the economy pretty much drops. And because my business is most of these folks pay cash collection became a lot of drama for us. But on the flip side, during COVID, many of these governments opened up their islands to entrepreneurs from the United States and Europe. and they had different programs. I can tell you, a lot of CEOs from a lot of startups in the West Coast moved to Barbados, to Cayman, and they could only do that and run their businesses from there is because they have great fiber connectivity. They are better than San Francisco, better than Seattle, better than Vancouver, better than Toronto. And because I know most of them, every one of them are calling me and they're like, okay, I'm moving there. Here's my home address. Can you make sure I get the best speeds? And for sure, I'm be like, listen, your home has fiber. You're gonna have better one back then, during COVID, you're gonna have more than 1 gig, and you can't even get that in Seattle. So don't worry about it. We got you covered. And it's shocking to some of these folks. What do you mean? I go to the Caribbean, I get better speeds than I get in Bellevue, Washington. This is crazy. Yeah.
And Juan, you had mentioned digital nomads, or Monica, I believe you had mentioned digital nomads as a driving economic force.
So yeah, I guess that to me, look, it comes down to the realities that governments are limited in dollars. For this two-tiered question, it's where are their dollars better spent, and where does it maximum impact for their constituencies. The reality is that many of these governments do not have the GDP to support all of the great ideas and what have you. And foreign investment does come in, but foreign investment has its own demons, if you will, to those government entities. So, reality is that it's identifying the high impact investments, particularly when it comes to digitization of any destination, and whether they get the biggest impact. And usually that's into tourism. A lot of times when they develop these either port developments or these resorts, the focus of getting connectivity to those areas are more important than the folks that might be inland and not as supported by government.
Fascinating. So, Balin, you had put a pin in a point. Were you able to convey that?
Yeah. It was mostly around the digital nomad, so we did cover that.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. So
Oh, by the way, and this is a commercial more for myself and to Juan. Juan, as you were talking about, the same experience, one thing we found really hard when we deal with the cruise industry is where we've made some proposals, certainly to the bigger guys, Carnival, etc., where before your customers, your as you call it, your sailors disembark, they could all get a SIM as they walk out, and then immediately they get in and they'll get, just like you would get your traffic in Miami or somewhere. It's the same traffic and it's very seamless. And we've not had much luck talking to any of the cruise operators around trying to get them a seamless experience for their customers, because they're only on the island for a day, literally 9 a.m. to about 5 p.m. And we see the traffic bump 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. But we could make it better. And they're always coming into our stores trying to figure out how to do it. And we're like, it'd be easier if we just work with the cruise operators directly. And before they disembark, here's the SIM. And so they don't clog my shops as they all get on the island.
I'd be very interested to explore that with you, Balan, because you're right, especially in those destinations that don't have the connectivity that we would expect. We would absolutely like to explore that with you, because we are heavily into the Caribbean. 3 out of our 4 ships will be here through the winter. So yeah, it'd be great to explore that.
So you see at the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center, we're doing deals in real time and live streaming partnership creation. So thank you for embodying partnership and being role models for everybody watching. This is what I'm talking about. So in terms of coming together, actually, I wanted to double click on this concept of resilience. We're throwing it around a little bit in this conversation. And I want to ask our panelists, what does this mean to each one of you? Maybe Juan, we'll start with you. How has Virgin's, because you mentioned this,
COVID was a rough time for the cruise industry. Um, what does resilient tourism mean in an era that's post-COVID and also amid climate uncertainty?
Yeah, great question because we launched in February of 2020. So you can imagine it's the worst timing in business history. But we have survived. We've come out the other side quite well. Uh, there's many aspects of resilience. There's business continuity. There is sustainable tourism in order to address the issues of sustainability in the destinations, and that includes over tourism, not just pollutions and things like that. So for us, we focus very heavily on supporting destinations, particularly in their sustainable programs. The cruise industry invests heavily into sustainability in order to ensure that we are doing everything in our power to ensure resilience of this industry, the destinations that we visit, and what have you. Then there's just a resilience of business continuity. For example, on a hurricane, infrastructure that is resilient to the powers of Mother Nature. That in itself is something that we take into consideration, and we support our destinations in their investments to become resilient, and also with their digital platforms and communications. We support many of these destinations through thick and thin, just to make sure that for us it's business continuity and resilience to our ability to deliver the promise we sell to all our sailors.
Thank you. Monica, from the World Bank perspective, what does resilience mean for these small island economies?
Yes. So as I touched on a bit before on resilience and in the Caribbean and tourism, but resilience has made is a revamp way of thinking about resilience, let's say. And it means not only recovery, it means, after you have a shock, but it means the capacity to anticipate, to absorb, to adapt, and to recover from the shocks, right? While driving sustainable and inclusive and competitive growth, right? So that's how we envision this the resilience concept, which is more holistic, right? And also encompasses economic, social, and environmental dimensions. And of course, it requires coordinated action by the governments, the businesses, the communities, and the regional organizations. And here I would like to emphasize again about regional in the Caribbean. It's very important. In terms of small, I mean, we can, in terms of what can be done in terms of resilience, there's the advanced climate disaster risk reduction with natural-based solutions, blue-green infrastructure, smarter disaster risk management, and catastrophe risk pools, and innovation based on natural-based solutions, for instance. And in the case we have there's the blue bond in Belize as an example of how to prepare for shocks, and then we have developed the catastrophe bonds at the bank as mechanism to support countries in the eventual happening of a shock.
Maybe you could expand on
there's also, I think, an important aspect. I think it would, and there are several, but I would like to concentrate also on circular economy, because this is one of the issues that the region is suffering from, right? And then uh, thinking about zero waste tourism initiatives, water energy innovation, and also innovations, for instance, with sargassum seaweed, no, in which it's costly, is affecting much every day more and more because of the climate change. And so how can they use this not only to clean it, which is already a lot of work, but also how to transform it into energy, into other products, into substitutes of plastics, etc. So in small islands, it's very important to think about circular economy, because waste and waste management and water management are at stake. No, they're very important in small places and particularly islands.
Thank you. Balin, Liberty Latin America owns physical assets, fiber, subsea fiber and terrestrial fiber. And then on top of that, you have a service layer. So there are many kinds of external shocks ranging from, hurricanes and service disruptions to cyber attacks. In that context, what does resilience mean to you?
The primary resilience issue for us is physical resiliency
Mhm.
through weather pattern changes. Cyber remains an issue for all telecoms companies, as a matter of fact, any industry. And being in that part of the world, we are actually, I think, have a, touch wood, a world-class, cyber protection with all the right name brand supporting us, as well as, my cybersecurity team, which covers all of, Latin America, also oversees the Caribbean. So it's a world-class team. So we don't just have a cybersecurity team just dedicated to the Caribbean. It's across our industry, my whole geography. The physical resiliency has always been an issue for all Caribbean islands. And the way we look at it, it's from three angles. One, resiliency on the infrastructure, resiliency on recovery, and resiliency on the financials. So before we had invested and bought, what we did was we bought a lot of the incumbent phone companies for each one of these islands. It's a company called Cable and Wireless. And the transformation was not only just transformation in the technology and upgrading all the plant, but every time a country gets hit or an island gets hit by a hurricane, as an example, that company would be struggling, very dependent on external aid, whether it's the World Bank or someone, another country, donations, etc., to get cash in to help rebuild. So the first thing we had to do was get financial resiliency. So we implemented what we call a parametric insurance plan, and it's a very exotic coverage where we have a whole bunch of investors and also from traditional insurance companies, but even non-traditional ones, where we put in a policy that literally covers us in the event of a category 3 or higher hurricane. So we're not dependent on any external funding. You get hit, you get the money, you got the funds to quickly rebuild. The second thing is on infrastructure resiliency. Every island that we operate in, we have 2 points of connectivity back to the United States. So if one fiber gets cut, there is another fiber that can get you back to Miami. And why the United States? Because all of your any of your services is very dependent on ISIS, whether it's Google search, whether it's your news information, whether it's education, whether it's the government operations, all governments, whatever their services, it really runs on an AWS cloud infrastructure that's not on the island. So everything in the digital world for every one of these governments, that connectivity back to Miami or that connectivity back to Texas is extremely important. So we have double redundancy for every island. And the third part is all the radio infrastructure, etc. We have a huge warehouse in Miami, and we have what we call cows, this cell on wheels. As soon as we see something come, we move them to the islands. And when we get hit, we immediately turn it on. And 90% of the time we never get hit, but we are always ready. And if we do get hit, like last year we got hit in Grenada and St. Vincent very badly. If I show you pictures, you just cry.
Wow.
And we were able to rebuild that infrastructure very quickly because we keep this big warehouse of everything we need in Miami. So that's how we look at resiliency.
Amazing. Amazing perspectives. We have just about 4 minutes left, so we're going to do this last question as a little bit of rapid fire. And it's meant to kind of summarize some of the key themes. But how can Caribbean countries scale their services sector? And if you were to propose one investment priority for US investors or US companies, or one policy reform, either on the US side or on the side of the Caribbean nations, what would you propose? So let's do it rapid fire, starting with Monica. And you are on mute, unfortunately.
There was some background noise, so I had to turn it off. So yeah, this is a great question, and it's not an easy one because there's many things that one can say, right? I believe that if I were to choose, and based on the study we did on cruise accommodation and adventure tourism that was published last spring, the single most important policy reform that I would say is the modernization of the tourism governance to invest in underlying tourism assets through transparent, perform-based revenue collection and allocation. And this means in each of the sectors we have, and I invite all to see the report, but I think that when it's very important is that the taxes and fees and all these policies are reviewed, are harmonized, are renegotiated, and this can be these new resources are going to be important. And then how that policy and it's we propose several activities on the modernization of this policy. It has to do with
We're
this, as I was saying,
gonna end on the
transparency,
policy point, which
data-driven.
is a good one. And for the follow-up conversation, we'll get into the specific actions. Juan, in 1 minute, how can Caribbean countries scale their service sector, and where should we invest as the U.S. private sector?
So the investment needs to go into the entrepreneur, okay, partnering with the local entrepreneur that has the will and desire to deliver in the travel industry, tourism industry aspect of it, right? The government needs to relax its policies, its procedural forms of foreign investors partnering with local entrepreneurs to up a business that is supportive and will bring employment to locals, which is one of the challenges that we always have with local governments.
Great recommendation. Balin, bring us home. Where should we invest, and how can the Caribbean scale its services sector?
One change they could make that would make a whole world of difference, a common currency pegged to the US dollar, and they will see tremendous amount of investment.
Fascinating. And maybe it's a stable coin. Who knows? There's a lot of things we can do, but the big takeaway is that this is a critical region. It's critical because the US and the Caribbean are so geographically linked, are so interpersonally linked, and so economically linked. So resilience is important for United States citizens, United States firms, for Caribbean nations, for the people of the Caribbean nations, and for economic development in the Western Hemisphere. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Adrienne Arsht at Latin America Center, Waz, Jason, Maite, Ms. Arsht, and thank you so much for our esteemed panelists and the Atlantic Council for a wonderful conversation with great ideas, highlighting key themes that are important for all the peoples of the Americas.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, everybody. Nice to
Thank
meet
you,
you, Juan
guys.
and Monica.
Yep, pleasure.
Thanks so much.